these things are kind of random the way they've made their way into the museum, and that's true of a lot of objects that are in museum collections, right?
Yeah. I think that's increasingly that's something that becomes clear when you look into the not just what you have in the collection, but how you got it. That these usually along the way somewhere someone had to either buy something or someone had to be somewhere. So that's usually to do with trade, and I mean these were definitely to do with trade. And in terms of where our collection came from in Manchester, the bulk of our collection is probably from South Asia and Australia, New Zealand, Canada, North America, East Africa. And if you were to look for big collections from South America, for example, you're probably better placed to go to like Portugal or to Spain, because that's where their former empires came from. Because the sort of golden age of collecting, I suppose, is kind of 1860 to 1920, something like that. The absolute age of empire. So these two things are linked together. That the money and the power that were generated by empire were also responsible, the power to be able to collect things or to take things.
Yeah, when you go to a museum, like, you may wonder what the motivations were behind what you see and what collections are there. Yeah. You might not even think about it. But then again, if you really question it, it's not necessarily as scientific and well planned as what you expect. It's really just what people may have donated, how Dresser's collection ended up here rather than some other museum in England.
Yeah, I mean that's a very kind of 19th century competitive kind of model that a museum, you still hear about it, that a museum is judged on the size of its collection or how many types it has and these kind of things, and that kind of hides the uniqueness of that collection. And I think increasingly that's what people are interested in. So rather than try and disguise the history of things, it's more interesting to know these things, about, well, what was the very tortuous process by which this came here. As we said, this has been through the wars, literally. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and the fact that his story, the fact that you have his diary, because without his diary and his words, it would still just be an object, right? Yeah. You wouldn't have as much context to put it in. But like you were just reading, you can literally look by the date and find out exactly what his day was like.
Yeah. Well, I've been quite lucky in that I've managed to find quite big archives from Henry Dresser to his friends. So in the Smithsonian, there's a huge amount of material in the University of Cambridge, in the Natural History Museum, and in Russia. So we managed to get, and it was quite interesting because we got these letters from Henry Dresser to his Russian friend, and the people in this museum couldn't read the letters. So by coincidence, one of my colleagues is Russian, so I wrote them out in English. He translated them into Russian, and then we sent them back to the Russian museum. So that was quite good fun.
Yeah, well, that's funny. Even how nowadays as individuals, you stumbled across it just because you wanted to know more about what you had here in your collection. So you found all these little links. And then I stumbled across you through this research project. So it's just individuals finding each other throughout history.
Yeah, it's total serendipity. It's great, really.
Yeah.